Look at this, all the way back to him. Double tap. Is Tenma about to put this into effect? Let's see. Okay, now it's finally about to get into new content. I feel like it's been like 4 to 5 minutes. Ah, you got him. Double tap, Tenma? Oh. Oh, look at that. How dramatic. Cast into the fire. It's not technically a double tap, but he did it. He did it. Ooh, The Demon in My Eyes. Interesting. Really, really interesting title, actually. Is that the end of Roberto? Probably not, even though it should be. You know, he should be dying after that, taking that fall. Broken neck or... and got shot twice. Yeah, he did. He almost did. He almost lost control. Okay, Tenma, you did it, eh? You shot someone. Now, you know, it is in self-defense. Bit of a different ball game. Or he thought at least it's self-defense. I'm still not sure if Roberto was going to shoot him. Descending into hell. Oh shit, is that Roberto's body? Oh. That should snap him back into reality. Oh, they're going up. Kind of tough to do that at the moment. Something shifted recently, right? For Johan. You can almost kind of pinpoint the origins of that shift. It looks pretty calm, to be fair. That's the real question, isn't it? Oh. Right into his eyes, eh? Oh, look at that. The demon in my eyes, if you... Whoa. Okay. This is quite layered, actually. Checks out. Hold on, okay, now he's like terrified. Something clicked? Speaking of the other half. Yeah, something happened there. You know, being that up close to Schubert, so he could see him. Interesting. It's almost as if she can feel that energy on the inside of that building. Ah, right. Of course. Yep, as expected. The demon in my eyes. It's also a matter of perspective, isn't it? A demon in someone's eyes might be, I don't know, man, someone special in someone else's eyes. Bit of an angel in someone else's eyes. Oh, there actually is a document. Two birds, one stone, get him out of there, and there's an actual document as well. Ooh. Huh. Polish? Oh, okay. Immediate answer. Prague. He certainly took a liking to her. For some reason, I just thought of Karl Fritz. Are there arrangements for Karl before sending him off? The subtitles are kind of wonky there. I mean, I hope there's some plans. Arrangements, rather, for Karl. Subarashi, I love that. Head of the black market bank, you say? That's Johan. They told me episodes ago about that. The boss man that Tenma treated. He told us, right? Offenbach. Oh God. Oh God. Random, you say. Ooh. Retired and found that youngster. This... Living happily now? Wow, the connections, man. Johan's mom, that's a friend. Wow. There's always a connection, right? The social connections. And it goes really far back. This is an interesting approach, man. In the middle of that to cut to this. But there's some incredible revelations there as well. Time to change gears, perhaps, Tenma? Oh. It's a big crowd, eh? All of them see it. The Japanese man, the savior. Boys, you gotta help him. Okay. To be fair, you know, they're under quite a bit of stress. Okay then. Just remember, You know? Of course. 2 more shots left. Oh, no. I love the aesthetic here. Oh. Okay then. Look at that. Oh, beautiful stuff. He's ready. He's more than ready to die here. X marks the spot. And this man has just had his mind blown. Something clicked. The rooftop game at play once again. Oh god. They're canceling each other out. It's almost dark comedy. It's a bit different, isn't it? It's not self-defense. Self-defense. Totally different. That's the shot. That's the shot. My god. Whoa. Missed every single shot. And the curtain drops. Okay, so that is episode 38 of Monster. Yeah, that's some episode. Some episode. I mean, it's certainly a unique episode as far as the structure is concerned. And, you know, honestly speaking, it's equal parts riveting, but also equal parts frustrating. Because again, as compelling as it is in its moments, this episode felt like, you know, it's being stretched out quite a bit. I mean, you know, you go to the excessive recap to the point that it's about to reach like 4 to 5 minutes of recap, or to the point that it's actually just showing me scenes from the last episode again, right? And, you know, I question if this is because of a potential break in the original airing, right? And they wanted to make sure that, okay, you know, since there's been a break, maybe they should show the scenes again, you know, the final moments at least, leading up to the cliffhanger of episode 37. But yeah, it felt like a bit much, you know? But yeah, I just felt that, you know, it's really quite clear to see the structure of this episode and the approach and this whole idea of kind of, you know, stretching it out as much as they can. And it's interesting given, you know, the nature or the magnitude of this episode. You know, it kind of felt like a bit of a finale episode to an arc, because, you know, there's tremendous setup in the prior episode, right? Again, another tremendous episode. Is this episode in equal to that episode? Perhaps not. But there are moments present within the episode that are really quite substantial, really significant turning points, major revelations, and just some incredible setup for the things to come, right? Exciting setup, exciting things to come from the looks of it, from the sounds of it. And, you know, this setup in the context of the story, you know, within the context of the story, you know, this setup has been at play for some time now through our Johann Lieber, who essentially does end up surviving once again, right? He survives the rooftop game once again. So that allows him, that gives him the incentive, that gives him the chance, that gives him the reason to go out there and play again. You go back to episode 33, another fantastic episode, of course. The kid asked Johann about this new game, right, that he'll be playing soon. I believe the kid said something like, oh, you might be shot soon, or you said that you might be shot soon. And then, of course, it goes a bit further than that, because, you know, it's a really specific question as well. You know, when is the Japanese person going to shoot you? And of course, that Japanese person does find himself in a position, finally, after a long time, planning for this position and hunting Johann down he finally does find himself in that position, right? But it's a unique position to be in. Totally different, totally separate from, self-defense. Again, I'll get into all of that. But yeah, like I said, Johan survives yet again, once again, right? And now he gets to continue playing, right? Much like after he survived Anna shooting him, right? Anna shooting him, Nina shooting him. Listen, she does shoot at him. She goes all in. Surprisingly, and maybe a tad bit unrealistic as well, that she didn't land a single hit. Now, yes, granted, there's quite a bit of distance, there's smoke, there's fire, but, she shot quite a bit. I think 3 or 4 shots. There's a high likelihood that one of those shots is going to, land on Johan or graze Johan, hit him in the shoulder, in the leg or something, but nothing lands, as far as I know, from the look of things. Now, of course, before I go any further, at no point did I expect Johan to actually die. Because again, like I've said a few times now, over the span of the past few episodes, leading up to this, of course he cannot die. Not yet, at least, right? It's just the midpoint of the anime, of the story. But then, the thing is, he's still in situations that should get him hurt. At the least, he should be hurt. Again, given that, Nina or Anna does actually shoot at him multiple times. And, the thing is, even if us, the audience, didn't really expect Johan to die at this moment, I can still see how people might find the whole, Nina and Dr. Tenma canceling each other out aspect of it frustrating. I don't personally find it that frustrating because I think there is some interesting stuff at play there, but I can see how many people might find something like that frustrating, right? This idea of, Tenma working up to it and just going through all of these things, right? To ultimately get his chance, point blank. And, he's not able to do it, right? To some people, that might be really quite frustrating. But, like I said, he finds himself in 2 really unique situations in terms of having to shoot people. In one case, earlier in the episode, he was able to work up the resolve, right, to defend himself, to work up the resolve to inflict significant harm, potentially fatal. So ultimately, inflicting harm as a direct act of self-defense against Roberto, right? And then, I said potentially fatal because, you go back to my thoughts from the last episode as well. I said that, okay, perhaps Tenma might work up the resolve to actually shoot him, right? Once push comes to shove. But, it might be that situation of, okay, Roberto might be out for the count for the moment, right? But he'll end up surviving, right? So shooting him might take him out of commission for now, so he can't really play a further role in this really specific case. But, he still might be around. I still believe that might be the case, even though, like I said, he probably shouldn't be surviving that, But let's kind of go back and finish up that point about the 2 really unique situations he found himself in, right? With a gun in his hand, pointed at 2 different individuals, right? After all of that, after the whole Roberto situation and, actually getting that out of his system, really getting that out of it. But, here's the thing. Is it truly going to be out of his system? I'll kind of explore the connotations, the aftermath, the fallout of him actually finally shooting someone, right? And how he might actually handle it, right? Because listen, even if I think Roberto might survive that and he is going to play a further role in the rest of the story, as of this point, I think it's fair to just assume that Tenma believes he has killed a person, right? Even if it is in self-defense, even if it is this big ogre, Roberto, right? Again, let's, come back to that. But, the second half of this, or the second time he finds himself pointing a gun at someone, he's pointing a gun at a defenseless person, right? At least at that moment in time, right? And that defenseless person being Johan, who then proceeds to point at his forehead, urging Tenma to execute him then and there. If it wasn't already a tricky situation for Tenma, pulling the trigger on Johan goes and does that. Something like that is just bound to mess with you. And, like I said during the episode, I firmly believe that Johan was actually ready to die at that moment, then and there, right? He's not afraid of death. Hell, he's more than ready to embrace it. I think, he's been more than ready to face the consequences, once the time comes. And I believe at that moment in time, he truly just embraced it. I mean, sure, Johan does like to play mind games with Tenma. He's been doing it for some time now. So, of course, there is an element of that in there. But again, I do believe he is or was more than ready to die in that moment. But he escaped. He survives once again. And, that whole idea of being a chosen one or being the chosen one, that's just about to, become even more intense in his mind. But yeah, to finish up my point about Tenma having to shoot Roberto and then Tenma being in the position to shoot Johan, there's a moral difference, right, at play here. Because again, in this situation, it's an act of offense, right? It's not reactive. There's nothing that is kind of pushing you up against the wall here. And, that indeed does make it that much more difficult, especially given the fact that it's Dr. Tenma to begin with, right? So, I've got no qualms about that. I think that checks out. That makes a lot of sense. But like I said a little bit earlier, it'll be interesting to see if Tenma actually has any qualms about shooting and killing Roberto, right? Again, if you look at it from Tenma's perspective, he most definitely must think that he has killed Roberto, right? Regardless of the actual outcome of it, right? Taking a life is taking a life, right? Even if it is in self-defense. I'm looking at it through Tenma's lens, right? How he might possibly digest this, right? Is it something he'll be at peace with, right? Is that something even possible for someone like Tenma? Or is it going to linger and eat away at him? Again, even if it is in self-defense. But, that being said, he does kind of make it a point to notice, or they make it a point to, actually focus on this moment that Tenma realizes and actually notices that Roberto didn't actually shoot him in the standoff. Like, he didn't ultimately end up shooting him, right? Or firing off a shot. Now, again, it looked like after getting shot the first time, Roberto, kind of lost it. Like I said, it looked like he's about to lose control and go against perhaps any directive that he might have had from Johan about, harming Tenma, in that capacity. It looked like he was kind of ready to shoot. But I suppose, again, Tenma beat him to the punch. But, this idea of Nina and Tenma kind of canceling each other out at that moment. Both of these people have really mixed feelings about Johan, right? It's complicated. It just is. And ultimately, subconsciously, there is this built-in reluctance on both their parts, right? Both of them feel the need to take responsibility for something that might be out of their control. So for some time now, Tenma's thought process here is that he brought Johan back to life, or he saved his life, right? He is responsible for keeping this person around, right? Or setting him free out there, setting him on the world again, right? And again, everything that's come of it, everything that's been attached to Johan, all the death, the carnage that he leaves in his path, Tenma feels the responsibility of that. And then some. So, from his perspective, the burden has to be on him and not Anna. But then if you switch to Anna, she thinks that it's her burden, right? And not Dr. Tenma's. She told him all that time ago, he's a doctor. It's his job to save people, to save lives. He simply cannot do this. He cannot take a life. He cannot shoot. You mustn't shoot, as she said to him again, right? So in her mind, it's her burden, right? To protect Dr. Tenma as well. And then also to finish the job, right? As she feels she didn't do it the first time. She didn't manage to kill him the first time, right? Back around the time they're kids. Back around the time Johan insisted or urged Nina to do it, right? I believe it's actually in the exact same scene I'm thinking of by that lakefront. Right. This is, again, a long time ago now. This is around the time she has clarity and she remembers how she did point a gun at Johan and, he urged her to go through with it. Something along those lines. You'll have to excuse me. I can't remember the exact, detail, but, it's along those lines, right? That she did remember that moment and she's, sharing it with Dr. Tenma at that moment. by the lakefront. Much like how Johan urges Dr. Tenma to shoot in this episode, right? Johan just straight up points right to his dome, right to the forehead. But yeah, by the end of it, yet another cliffhanger, as it's actually quite the literal curtain drop as it fades to black into the outro. I suppose for some people, even that might be a little bit frustrating, how that episode kind of ended. Yeah, I mean, do I think any of them are going to die from that? I don't think so. I mean, Schubert could get hurt, right? He could get hurt and be admitted to a hospital, and maybe some interesting scenes could come out of that. I mean, hell, even Nina can get hurt from that. The whole thing just collapsed, right? But again, you see that at this point, Tenma's entire attention is on Nina, right? And in the background, you see that Johan slowly just kind of, walks it off. He just walks off and almost kind of fades into the smoke, right? Like a phantom. And yeah, he survived, right? He gets to walk out of there somehow. Now, I'll come back to Johan in a bit, because there's actually quite a bit of Johan, even if it isn't stuff from the present, right? There's a lot of really, really fantastic stuff, actually. But, kind of focusing a bit on Tenma again, that aspect of him kind of changing gears, right? And realizing, okay, there's actual life at stake here. There's a lot of innocent people's lives at stake here. And you see, once he kind of comes to, and, it kind of required him kind of tripping over someone, right? Someone that's actually trying to climb the stairs alongside many others. Tenma then realizes, okay, he's got to do something here. He's not able to just look the other way and, stay on his trajectory of going after Johan in this moment. For a moment, at least, he had to change directions and actually go help these people out as best as he could. Ultimately, he is able to help them out, right? He is able to kind of almost pull some of these people out of this shock, right? As they see Tenma trying his best to break through the door right after shooting the hinges. And all of those people saw this man, this Japanese man. And, I say Japanese man because, again, he's unique, right? In that setting, at least. All of them saw the things that he did there. All of them saw his efforts. All of them saw that this person saved their lives, right? So let's see how someone like Lunge potentially takes this news. And, that's kind of the reason I was kind of smiling throughout that scene, because, there's so many people that are seeing this, that saw this, right? And that are going to recognize his efforts. So, of course, someone like Lunge, it'll be interesting to see how he really, truly takes this, right? And again, speaking of Lunge, surprisingly, he's the only one who hasn't shown up yet, right? He kind of missed the whole thing. Right. So yeah, I suppose it kind of checks out, because now he's going to have plenty to investigate in the aftermath of it, the fallout of it. But yeah, let's kind of switch back to Johan and Schubert specifically, right? That exchange that happens, because there's a before and after, right? Schubert before is a person that is still, kind of unmoved, right? To the point that even Johan makes a point of pointing it out. You're not afraid, are you? You're not scared at the moment, are you? But that changes. That changes and then some, because something happened, something clicked, and I don't think it's just as simple as, he actually saw into the eyes of the devil and that kind of thing. I mean, yes, you can kind of. There's some interesting stuff there as well. If you kind of even go back to the title of the episode, The Demon in My Eyes, right? Again, that being a matter of perspective as well. I mean, let's kind of look at it really quick. The demon in my eyes, right? And that being a matter of perspective, of course, you could look at it as the monster inside of me. That's a running theme. The demon in my eyes, as in Schubert being reflected in those eyes, given the close proximity of actually looking right into Johan's eyes, right? To the point that you can probably see yourself reflected in it. And of course, even there, you've got a couple of different possibilities, right? Be it Schubert being that demon that's being reflected in the eyes, be it the fear that is being reflected in Johan's eyes, right? And the fear being Schubert in that moment, right? And again, that fear that just kind of clicks all of a sudden, that just didn't exist a moment before. And then finally, this idea of it being a matter of perspective, it's just this notion of, okay, a demon in my eyes, as in, in my opinion, that this person is a demon personified in my opinion. So again, a really interesting title. Most of these titles usually are rather interesting. And, I've got to say, the title drop once again, the title card drop, I really, really like that. Really like that. And again, accompanied by that really strong piece of score as well. But yeah, let's kind of go back to Schubert and Johann. It all kind of kicks off after Schubert asked him the question. And again, like I said, that's the question, isn't it? Who are you? Where did you come from? And Johann proceeds to pull his face right up to his own face. And also on that front, it's a bit of a rare moment, isn't it? You don't really truly get to see Johann's eyes, wide open, right? You don't get to see them in that capacity. That's why it's a bit of a jarring moment. I was mid-sentence. You see that his eyes really, truly widen. And I was kind of left speechless, and I just kind of had to take that moment in. Of course, a little window to his soul. And, once again, the title kind of comes in because there's quite a contrasting beauty, a haunting beauty about this whole thing, right? Because Johann, I've spoken about his appearance and how he appears to be this angelic figure at times, but you see how beautiful those eyes really are. Yet in that moment, once again, Johann instills fear, right? He brings that fear out. And Schubert, who again is rather calm up until that point, right? Now again, I'm not saying it's because of, that close-up of the eyes alone, but I think the follow-up is the critical component of this, right? And the impact it had on Schubert. Because at some point, something just clicked, right? He realized something, or he remembered something, or is reminded of something here. Again, perhaps it could be by design, from Johann's perspective as well. If that's the case, he certainly did his job. It did the trick. Now let's kind of look into the things that Johann had to say here, right? The information that he had to share. I was born in a town that was straight out of a fairy tale. Now that, that could be, a lot of these things are actually perhaps a bit of a mix of the two, right? A bit of his actual, life, at that age, and also a mix of a nameless monster, right? The narrative from the book itself, the journey of the monster itself. But yeah, this idea of a town that is straight out of a fairy tale, it could just be as simple as him describing the place he comes from, right? From Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, Prague. So maybe I could look that up and see if, Czech Republic or Prague specifically is kind of, but again, I kind of have to be careful about that, looking up anything monster related. So maybe I'll leave that. Then things take a bit of a turn, right? As he said, many people died, right? And then follows that up by saying, I held the hand of my other half and walked, right? And of course, that's essentially that scene of him and Nina at the border, right? But I think the really interesting component of this is that follows up after him saying many people died, right? And then he goes on to say that, he held the hand of his other half and walked. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that is meant to be him and Nina, walking to the border, right? And again, they said as much back then as well, so they're found surrounded by dead bodies, I believe, right? Or they walked through dead bodies. Yeah, I think that might be the case. And it's at that point that something appeared to have clicked, right? Something made sense to Schubert. And you see that immediately it's like a flip of the switch. And now he's completely terrified. He is petrified. It did a number on him. It kind of cuts to him again a little bit later on, right? As he still just sat there on the stage, baffled, right? So yeah, there's something really quite interesting going on here. And then to finish that up, Johann said there's only two like us. There were only two like us, right? And that they didn't have names. Again, that kind of links back to, or can link back to, a nameless monster. So from the looks of it and how it's presented, and again, the outcome of it, a terrified Hans Georg Schubert, the things that Johann had to say there, they ring a bell. They certainly ring a bell for Schubert, don't they? Right? He understands the things that Johann is describing here, right? And again, it feels to be deliberate. It's by design. Johann is describing these things, and he's pulling Schubert up close to himself, right up to his eyes, and describing these things for a specific reason. And I think it had the desired effect, right? Schubert seems to remember something now. And it scares him. It terrifies him. Now let's shift the focus to Karl and, his late mom, right? Helenka. I think I called her Helena. But yeah, there's also quite a connection to both, Schubert and Johann. I mean, there is some crazy revelations here, right? Now listen, before I go any further, it's the whole scene itself, it's a bit of an info dump, right? It certainly drags a bit. It does, but it does kind of slowly work up to some really integral information, new setup moments here because of this information. And again, it once again kind of reiterates just how far back a lot of this planning goes as far as Johann is concerned, and how far back some of these connections go. Like I said, the social connections and the human relationships of this ensemble cast are once again on showcase. Now, it's great that Karl kind of gets to, learn all these things about his mom. But there's a totally different layer present, right? That Karl is just not even able to understand. It's more so for, again, us, the audience, right? Because there's a totally different thing at play here as well. Johann at play here as well. Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of interesting things come out of this about his mom. But again, the most striking component of it, I think, or part of it, is that, her friend, the mother of these twins, is essentially Johann and Anna's mom, right? That was a friend that was trying to cross with Helenka, right? Am I remembering correctly? I think I messed up and said Helena, but it was Helenka, right? Yeah, that was a friend, but the friend couldn't cross and is taken back, or was taken back, to Prague. But yeah, once it kind of gets to that bit about the letter that she wrote, and she begins to kind of go into detail about some of the things, stuff like the things I think about in my peaceful life are, the son that I am not with anymore, the son I'm separated from, right? Now, before I go any further, just that aspect of it, her sending Karl away, like, I don't think it completely makes sense, to be honest. Her actions, she could have kept Karl around, right? I mean, she even said herself right now, her peaceful life, right? She's thinking about the son that she's separated from. Yeah, you're separated from your son because you sent him away, right? And it didn't appear. Listen, maybe it's a fault of the adaptation, perhaps, but it didn't look like she had any arrangements, right? The father certainly didn't know about it at that point, at least. And I'm speaking of Schubert, because almost immediately after I asked, I hope there's arrangements, or she did make arrangements for Karl. They once again tell me that, yeah, he bounced from foster home to foster home. Now, that being said, he did come across a lot of really incredible foster parents, right? But it's a little bit surprising that she just sent him off and just didn't really have any arrangements, unless I'm just to assume that she did have some arrangements and those arrangements just didn't work out, perhaps. But then, the bit about the friend that she got separated from because they tried to cross the border together. The friend was captured, right? Captured at the border and taken back to Prague. And afterwards, she gave birth to twins and is now living happily
So that part had me a little bit confused because, okay, so if she's trying to, cross the border, of course she's not happy in her current situation, and her being, Johan and Nina's mom, Helenka's friend. But once she was taken back, I suppose things changed, and she found a better situation for herself, perhaps. But yeah, as I hover around the midpoint of the story of the series, the setup is there now. The direction it's heading into, it's an interesting direction for sure. But yeah, Johan has survived this, right? Let's see how it plays out for him from this point on, how he approaches things from this point on, and how things play out for Tenma and Anna, Nina, the things that Schubert might have to say from this point on, right? First, I just need to see how things are, after all that came crashing down on both of them. And then of course you've got Lunge, who's going to be around. There's a lot of really, really interesting stuff at play here. But yeah, I think I'll sign off on that note for this episode. If you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or full opacity or timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page, and the links are in the description and the pinned comment, also links to social media if that's your thing. Right then, thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for episode 39. Until then, take it easy.